Lieutenant Jack Harlow never thought he would be sent on a mission like this. Earth's Federation was known for its involvement in intergalactic peacekeeping efforts. But no one expected humans to be chosen for Royal Guard duties, especially not a human like Jack. He had always been a soldier, a protector, and someone who lived by the rules. He never imagined he'd be assigned to a royal princess from an alien empire. But now, standing on the edge of the royal palace in the heart of the Scree Empire, he couldn't help but feel out of place. The Scree were a remarkable race. Tall and elegant with shimmering skin that shifted like the colors of a distant star. They possessed psionic abilities that made them formidable opponents in both politics and war. Their technology was unmatched, and their knowledge of the universe seemed endless. Jack had heard stories of the Scree royal family, the most powerful and mysterious rulers in the galaxy. But he never thought he'd be standing guard for one of them. As Jack stepped through the massive palace doors, the gravity of the situation started to sink in. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission or a simple military assignment. He was here to guard Princess Alira, the heir to the throne. Her father, Emperor Salin, had been a powerful leader, and his daughter was expected to be just as influential, if not more so. There was a sense of duty and responsibility in the air that made Jack feel small, like he was just one piece in a much larger puzzle. Lieutenant Harlow. A calm voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see a tall Scree official, dressed in ceremonial robes, walking toward him. "The princess will see you now." Jack nodded, his heart racing slightly. He had trained for countless hours for moments like this, but nothing could truly prepare him for meeting a member of the royal family, especially one so young and powerful. The official led Jack down long hallways lined with towering columns and intricate tapestries. Every step felt like it took him further into a world he didn't fully understand. The walls seemed to hum with an energy that was both foreign and fascinating, as if the very air was alive with the history of the Scree people. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber. The door opened, and Jack was ushered inside. The room was grand, decorated with golden sculptures and jewels that sparkled like stars in the dim light. At the center of the room stood Princess Alira, her back to him as she gazed out of the massive windows overlooking the city. Her long, silver hair cascaded down her back, and her clothes shimmered in the light like they were woven from the very fabric of the galaxy. Jack hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. He had trained for combat, but he wasn't sure how to act in front of a princess, especially one who could read minds. "Lieutenant Harlow." Alira's voice was soft, but it carried authority. She didn't turn to face him as she spoke, but there was something about the way she said his name that made him feel both respected and challenged at the same time. He stepped forward, his boots clicking on the polished floor. "Princess Alira," he replied, his voice steady, though inside he was nervous. "I am honored to be assigned as your guard." She turned slowly, her piercing violet eyes meeting his. There was a calmness to her, but also something deeper, something that Jack couldn't quite place. She seemed like she was looking through him, not at him, as if she already knew everything about him, his strengths, his weaknesses, his past. "I selected you long before they sent you," she said, her voice calm but filled with meaning. "I've been watching you, Lieutenant. Your service, your skills, your heart. I knew you would be the one." Jack blinked, taken aback by her words. He had been briefed about his assignment, but no one had mentioned anything about being specifically selected by the princess herself. Was this some sort of royal tradition? Was she trying to make him feel important? "I don't understand, princess," he said cautiously. "I'm just a soldier, a guard. I don't have any special skills beyond my training." Alira smiled, though it was not a smile of warmth. It was more like the smile of someone who knew a secret they couldn't share. "You underestimate yourself, Lieutenant Harlow. Your kind is something that my people do not, a strength that no amount of psionic power or advanced technology can replicate." Jack didn't know how to respond. He had always been taught to keep his emotions in check, to focus on the mission and not let anything distract him. But Alira's words made him feel uneasy. What did she mean? What strength did humans have that the Scree didn't? Before he could ask, Alira motioned for him to follow her. "Come," she said. leading him to a nearby table where several holographic maps of the galaxy floated in midair. "The reason you've been assigned to me is more than just protection. The Scurry Empire is at a crossroads. War with the Dravith is looming, and our allies are growing restless." Jack nodded, trying to process everything. He had heard of the Dravith, a fierce and aggressive species that had been a thorn in the side of the Scurry for centuries. If war broke out, it could have disastrous consequences for everyone in the galaxy, including Earth. But Jack didn't understand why he, a human, was being brought into such a delicate situation. Why had Alira chosen him? "Do you know about the prophecy, Lieutenant?" she asked, her voice suddenly serious. Jack shook his head. "No, Princess. I've never heard of it." Alira stepped closer, her eyes narrowing with focus. "It speaks of a time when the fate of the galaxy will rest in the hands of one human. This person will either bring about peace or destruction. And that human," she paused for dramatic effect, "is you." Jack's heart skipped a beat. He took a step back, unsure of what to say. "I'm just a guard," he repeated. "There must be some mistake." Alira's expression softened slightly. "There is no mistake, Lieutenant. I selected you because I believe in your strength, your will to fight for what's right. But most importantly, I chose you because you are human." Jack stood there in silence, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on him. What did this prophecy mean for him? Could he really be the key to the galaxy's future? He didn't know the answers, but one thing was clear. This mission was unlike anything he had ever faced before. Jack stood by the massive windows of the royal palace, watching the city of Scree spread out below. The sun had set, casting a warm glow across the skyline, and the lights of the city twinkled like distant stars. But despite the peaceful scene, Jack's mind was racing. The words Alira had spoken to him earlier echoed in his mind, haunting him. "I selected you long before they sent you." Why? What did she mean? He was just a soldier, a simple human, no different from any other. But the way Alira had looked at him, like she knew something he didn't, made his skin crawl. There was something more going on here, something bigger than just guarding a princess. Alira had told him about a prophecy that spoke of a human who would change the galaxy's fate. But Jack didn't feel special. He didn't feel like he was the chosen one. Yet here he was, standing in the heart of an alien empire, caught up in a struggle he couldn't understand. "Lieutenant Harlow." A voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see Alira walking towards him. Her silver hair shimmered in the dim light, and her violet eyes seemed to pierce through him. Despite her calm appearance, there was something almost otherworldly about her. She wasn't just a princess. She was someone with a heavy burden on her shoulders. Someone who had seen more than Jack could imagine. "Princess," Jack said, straightening up. Alira gave him a small nod but said nothing at first. Instead, she gestured for him to follow her. They walked down the long, winding halls of the palace, passing by elegant tapestries and glowing crystal chandeliers. It was hard to believe that beneath all the beauty, there was such tension in the air. Jack followed her to a private chamber, one that he hadn't seen before. It was smaller than the grand halls but still richly decorated, with strange alien artifacts lining the shelves. Alira motioned for him to sit, and he did so cautiously, unsure of what to expect next. "The Scurry have been at war for generations," Alira began, her voice low and serious. "And the Dravith, they've always been a threat. But now, there is something much worse. A new weapon." Jack raised an eyebrow. "A weapon?" Alira nodded. "Yes, a weapon that could destroy entire planets. The Dravith have been working on it for years, and they are close to finishing it. If they launch it, they could wipe out entire star systems. The Scurry, and many others, could be destroyed." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard of the Dravith's ruthlessness, but this was something different. A weapon that could destroy planets? That was a threat beyond anything he had imagined. "What does this have to do with me?" Jack asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Alira met his gaze. "The prophecy speaks of a human who will either bring about peace or destruction. The choice is yours, Lieutenant Harlow. You are the key to stopping the Dravith." Jack blinked, trying to process her words. He didn't feel like a key. He didn't feel like anyone special, but the intensity in Alira's eyes told him that she believed every word she was saying. "Why me?" he asked, shaking his head. "I'm just a guard, just a soldier. I don't even know anything about this galaxy or your people. I'm not anything like what you're describing." Alira smiled faintly. "You're more than you think, Jack. The humans of Earth have something that we do not. You have resilience, determination, a strength that comes from your very nature. My people, the Scurry, have advanced technology and immense power. But we lack the one thing you possess, the ability to act when all seems lost." Jack stared at her, unsure of how to respond. He had never thought of himself as someone with special abilities, but the way Alira spoke made him feel like he was something more. Perhaps it was true that humans were different from the other species in the galaxy, but did that really mean he was destined to save them all? Alira stood up and walked over to one of the glowing artifacts on the table. She reached out and touched it, and it hummed with energy. A holographic map of the galaxy flickered to life, showing various star systems and planets. "This is the galaxy as it stands," Alira said. "The Scurry Empire controls most of the inner systems, while the Dravith control the outer territories. For years, there has been a fragile peace between us, but the Dravith are growing bolder. Their new weapon is the tipping point. If they attack, the entire balance of power could shift, and Earth's Federation will be caught in the middle." Jack frowned. "I understand that, but how does this relate to me? Why would I be able to stop this weapon?" Alira turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of determination and sadness. "The prophecy doesn't just speak of a human. It speaks of the human who will make the choice. You, Jack, have the power to unite the galaxy. The weapon can only be destroyed if it's attacked from the inside. Someone who understands how it works, someone who is willing to sacrifice everything to stop it. That person is you." Jack felt a cold sweat on his brow. He wasn't a hero. He was just a soldier following orders. Yet here Alira was, telling him that he was the one who could save everything. The weight of her words pressed down on him like 1,000 tons. I don't know what to say," he murmured. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this." "You are," Alira replied firmly. "I selected you because you are strong, and because you are human. You have something my people do not, an ability to make difficult decisions, even when the odds are stacked against you." Jack looked at her, her calm demeanor hiding the turmoil within. She wasn't just asking him to fight. She was asking him to make a choice that could change the fate of the galaxy. And somehow, he knew that he couldn't refuse her. "Not now." "All right," Jack said, his voice steadying as he stood up. "I'll do whatever it takes. But I need to know more. I need to understand how this weapon works and how we can destroy it." Alira nodded, her eyes softening. "We'll need to gather information. But first, there's something you must know about the Dravith weapon. It's not just a tool of destruction, it's tied to something much older. Something ancient." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Ancient?" "Yes," Alira said, her voice growing even quieter. "The Dravith weapon was built on a forgotten technology, one that has been hidden for centuries. And if we don't stop it now, it could mean the end of everything." Jack couldn't help but feel the weight of the task ahead. He was no longer just a soldier, he was the last hope for peace in the galaxy. The fate of countless lives rested on his shoulders, and he had no choice but to step forward. "I'm ready," he said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's stop the Dravith." The next few days passed in a blur for Lieutenant Jack Harlow. The palace, once a place of calm and mystery, now felt like a pressure cooker. Alira's words from their last meeting haunted him. "You are the key to stopping the Dravith." Jack didn't feel like a key. He was just a soldier, someone who had been trained to protect and follow orders. But Alira had chosen him. For reasons he still didn't understand, he was now at the center of a galactic war. Tasked with stopping a weapon that could destroy entire planets, Alira had been less distant lately. She no longer just gave orders from afar, but instead, she started to include Jack in the planning. She needed him as much as he needed her. The more time they spent together, the more Jack realized how little he knew about the Scurry people, and how much there was still to learn. One morning, Alira summoned him to her chambers. Jack had just finished a training session, and the sweat from his workout clung to his uniform. As he entered the room, he was surprised to find Alira standing in front of a holographic map of the galaxy. Her face was serious, and for the first time, Jack saw the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "Lieutenant Harlow," she greeted him, not turning away from the map. "We've received new intelligence. The Dravith have begun moving toward the Scurry homeworld." Jack's heart skipped a beat. The Scurry capital was one of the most heavily protected systems in the galaxy. If the Dravith could break through, it would be a disaster. "How long do we have?" "Less than 2 weeks," Alira replied. "They're already deploying their fleet to the outer edges of our territory. We need to act quickly." Jack nodded, his mind working quickly. "What's our plan?" Alira stepped away from the map and turned to face him. "We have 2 options. We can fight them head-on with the Scurry fleet, or we can try something more covert. The weapon they've built is still not fully operational, but we believe they've placed it in a hidden facility somewhere on their home planet." Jack raised an eyebrow. "So, you want me to sneak into Dravith territory and destroy a weapon that could wipe out entire planets? Just the 2 of us?" Alira's eyes softened, but her expression remained serious. "Yes, the Scurry fleet will need to defend the outer systems, but we don't have the resources to launch a full-scale attack. You and I will infiltrate their homeworld and destroy the weapon before they can use it." Jack exhaled slowly, taking in the enormity of the mission. He was no strategist, but it seemed like a risky plan. "Do you really think we can do this alone?" Alira smiled faintly. "It's not just about us, Lieutenant. You're here because I believe in your strength. You may not see it yet, but you have something inside you, something that the Scurry don't have. The ability to act when the odds seem impossible. That's why you were chosen." Jack couldn't help but feel a surge of pride at her words. But doubt still lingered. He was a soldier, not a hero. The idea of infiltrating Dravith territory, alone with Alira, and facing a weapon capable of destroying everything was overwhelming. But this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about saving the galaxy. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady. "Let's do it." 2 days later, Jack and Alira stood on the edge of a darkened hangar, surrounded by the quiet hum of the Scurry starships. Alira had chosen a small, stealthy craft for their mission, nothing too large to attract attention, but fast enough to make it to Dravith space undetected. Jack had been briefed on the ship's systems, but it felt different now. Standing on the edge of this dangerous mission, he glanced over at Alira, who was double-checking the ship's systems, her fingers moving expertly across the control panels. She was calm, as always, but Jack could sense a nervous energy beneath the surface. Even she wasn't immune to the weight of the mission. "Everything ready?" Jack asked, his voice steady. Alira nodded without looking up. "Everything's in place. We leave in 30 minutes. Once we're in Dravith space, we'll have very little time to locate the weapon and destroy it. We'll have to rely on each other." Jack felt a small surge of confidence. He had trained for this. He had trained for combat, for survival, for anything that might come his way. But this was different. He wasn't just protecting a planet. He wasn't just fighting a battle. This mission could determine the future of the galaxy. As the 2 of them boarded the ship, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced. And yet, despite the fear creeping in, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was exactly where he was meant to be. Alira sat in the cockpit, her hands flying over the controls. Jack strapped himself into the seat beside her, his heart pounding in his chest. The engines of the ship roared to life, and the hangar doors began to open, revealing the vastness of space. They were about to leave the safety of the Scurry Empire and venture into enemy territory. As the ship soared into the stars, Jack glanced at Alira. She caught his gaze, and for a moment, their eyes locked. There was no need for words. They were in this together. A few hours later, the silence of space enveloped them as the ship cruised through the void, its cloaking devices keeping it hidden from any potential threats. Jack had expected the journey to be tense, but it was more peaceful than he imagined. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound, and the stars outside the windows seemed to stretch on forever. Alira had been quiet for most of the journey, lost in thought. Jack could understand why. The mission ahead was dangerous, and the weight of their task was heavy. They both knew that failure wasn't an option. "We're close," Alira finally spoke, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, but Jack could hear the tension underneath. "Once we enter Dravith space, we'll have to move fast. Their defenses will be on high alert." Jack nodded. He wasn't scared, not yet, but he knew they had very little time. One mistake could be their last. Just then, an alert flashed on the control panel. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he leaned forward. "What's that?" Alira's fingers flew across the console, her face hardening. "We've been detected. The Dravith have a fleet nearby. We need to get out of here now." The ship's cloaking device flickered, and Jack felt a cold sweat form on his brow. They couldn't afford to be caught now. If the Dravith found them, the entire mission would fail. "We're going to have to fight our way through," Alira said, her eyes burning with determination. "Get ready." Jack's mind raced as he prepared for what was to come. He had trained for combat, but he had never been up against a full Dravith fleet. But if they were going to save the galaxy, this was their moment. It was time to prove himself. The ship lurched forward as the battle began. The battle in Dravith space had begun. Jack's pulse raced as the alarms blared inside the ship. The once peaceful hum of the engines was now replaced by the sharp sound of blaster fire and the echo of their rapid movements. Outside the windows, the stars had turned into streaks of light, and the Dravith fleet loomed ahead, dark and menacing. They were surrounded. Alira's voice was steady, despite the chaos around them. "We need to disable their flagship. Once we do, the rest of their fleet will fall into disarray." Jack gritted his teeth. "What's the plan?" Alira's violet eyes flashed with determination. "We'll approach their flagship from the backside, where their defenses are weakest. Once we're close enough, I'll use the ship's hacking systems to disable their shields. You'll have to take out their weapons systems once we get in." Jack nodded. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was all they had. If they could disable the flagship, the rest of the Dravith fleet would be vulnerable. But that meant getting close, too close for comfort. The ship's cloaking device flickered once more as Alira expertly maneuvered through the incoming fire. Jack's fingers tightened around the weapons controls. This wasn't the kind of mission he was used to. He was trained for ground combat, not space battles. But Alira was a skilled pilot, and Jack had to trust her. He had to trust that they could make it through this together. As the distance between their ship and the Dravith flagship closed, the tension inside the cockpit thickened. Jack could see the enormous ship looming in front of them, its dark, angular shape like a predator waiting to strike. "Get ready," Alira's voice was calm, but Jack could hear the quiet tension in it. "We're almost there." Jack gripped the weapon controls tightly. He could hear his own heartbeat thumping in his ears. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this felt different. This wasn't just about him. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about stopping a weapon that could destroy the galaxy. It was about making a choice that could decide the future. The ship jerked as a blast from the Dravith fleet struck their shields. But Alira quickly compensated, swerving the ship to avoid another shot. Jack steadied himself, his mind sharpening with focus. There was no room for mistakes. "We're in range," Alira said. "Now, Jack, it's your turn." Without hesitation, Jack activated the weapons system, launching a barrage of blasts toward the Dravith flagship's outer defenses. The shields shimmered briefly under the assault, and then finally there was a crack. The ship's shield grid flickered and sputtered, leaving it vulnerable. "Now," Alira shouted, "I've got their shields. You have a clear shot." Jack fired again, his aim precise, and the blast hit the weapons systems. Sparks flew from the ship's surface, and the Dravith flagship shook violently. Alira's fingers flew over the controls, and their ship rocketed forward, narrowly dodging incoming fire. "We did it," Jack said, feeling a surge of relief. "Their weapons are down." Alira didn't respond right away. She was focused, her eyes narrowed as she scanned the Dravith fleet. There was still a lot of chaos around them, and the rest of the enemy's ships hadn't given up. But disabling the flagship was a huge win. For a brief moment, Jack allowed himself to relax. But then Alira's voice cut through the tension. "We're not done yet, Jack. she said quietly. The Dravith are still targeting us. We need to make it to the planet's surface. Fast. Jack looked over at her, his heart hammering. You think they'll follow us? Yes, she said. But we can't let them. We need to get to the weapon's location before they do. They had a choice to make now. Alira had already taken risks. Jack had already fired the shot that disabled the flagship. But they weren't done yet. They needed to get to the weapon before it was too late. All right, Jack said, nodding firmly. Let's finish this. Hours later, they had made it. The planet was below them, and their ship was barely intact. Jack could feel the weariness creeping in, but he pushed it aside. There was no time for rest, no time to worry about what had just happened. They had one last objective, and it was more important than ever. Alira expertly guided the ship toward the planet's surface, weaving through asteroid fields and enemy fire. The Dravith fleet was still hot on their trail, but they were too far behind now to stop them from reaching their destination. The weapon they were after, the one capable of destroying entire planets, was hidden in a facility deep below the surface of the planet. We're almost there, Alira said, her voice calm but tired. I've located the facility. It's in a cavern system, under heavy guard. Jack nodded, his eyes scanning the terrain outside. We'll have to be quick. Once we're on the ground, we won't have much time before the Dravith find us. I know, Alira replied, but we don't have a choice. If we don't stop that weapon now, the galaxy will fall. The ship descended, its engines roaring as they cut through the atmosphere. They were almost at their landing zone. Jack could see the rocky, barren surface below, dotted with dark shadows. The facility was hidden beneath the surface, but Jack could see the faint glow of energy fields protecting it. Get ready, Alira said, her voice suddenly more serious. Once we land, we'll have to move fast. Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. The mission was almost over. The weapon was so close, but so was the danger. They had no idea what lay inside the facility or how many Dravith soldiers were guarding it, but it didn't matter. This was the moment. On the planet's surface, the ship touched down with a soft thud, its landing gear digging into the rocky surface. Jack and Alira quickly suited up, grabbing their weapons and supplies. The ship's hatch opened, and they stepped outside into the harsh, alien landscape. The wind whipped at their faces, carrying dust and debris. The facility's entrance was ahead of them, barely visible against the backdrop of jagged rocks. We move fast, Alira said, her voice low. We only have one shot at this. Jack nodded, his hand tightening around his blaster. They ran toward the entrance, their footsteps echoing in the empty expanse. The facility's heavy security doors loomed ahead, but Alira's hacking skills would make short work of them. She had everything they needed to break in. They reached the doors, and Alira quickly set to work, her fingers flying over the device she held. The door security system buzzed as it tried to fight back, but with a final swipe, Alira's device clicked, and the door opened. They were in. Jack's heart pounded as they moved deeper into the facility. They passed through long, narrow hallways lined with strange alien technology. The further they went, the more they could feel the hum of the weapon's power. It was close. Then, without warning, they turned a corner and came face to face with a group of Dravith soldiers. Jack's instincts kicked in immediately, and he opened fire, taking down the first two before they could react. Alira was right behind him, using her psionic abilities to knock out the remaining soldiers. But there were more ahead, and they were closing in. Jack's eyes met Alira's. We have to make a choice, princess. Now or never. Alira hesitated for just a moment, her face filled with determination. Now, let's end this. The halls of the Dravith facility were cold, the air heavy with the scent of metal and energy. Jack and Alira moved quickly through the corridors, the faint hum of machinery growing louder as they approached their target. The Dravith weapon was close now, so close they could almost feel its power. Jack's pulse raced. They had come so far, faced so many dangers, but they were finally here. The weapon that could destroy entire planets was just ahead. But so were the Dravith soldiers, and they were closing in. Stay focused, Alira whispered, her violet eyes scanning the dark hallway ahead. We have no time to waste. Jack nodded. His grip on his blaster tightened, but his mind was clouded with doubt. They had fought their way through the Dravith fleet, infiltrated their defenses, and now they were about to face their biggest challenge yet. But this mission was no longer just about survival. It was about a choice that would shape the future of the galaxy. They reached the entrance to the central chamber, the place where the weapon was being held. The doors were large and imposing, and Jack could feel the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on him. Alira stepped forward, her fingers brushing the control panel next to the door. A moment later, the doors hissed open, revealing the heart of the Dravith's weapon facility inside. The weapon was massive. It was unlike anything Jack had ever seen, an enormous core of energy surrounded by glowing alien machinery. The entire room seemed to pulse with power, the air vibrating with the force of it. Jack could feel it deep in his bones. This was it, the weapon that could bring destruction to countless worlds. We need to destroy it, Alira said, her voice tense. Now, Jack nodded, but a part of him hesitated. He had been trained to fight, to protect, but this was different. He was about to make a decision that would change everything, not just for him, but for the entire galaxy. Alira, Jack said, his voice low. What if we're wrong? What if destroying this weapon causes more harm than good? Alira turned to him, her expression serious. We can't afford to think like that, Jack. The Dravith have already used this weapon to threaten our galaxy. If we don't destroy it, they'll use it again, and next time, it may be too late. Jack glanced at the weapon, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. The Dravith would stop at nothing to conquer the galaxy. This weapon had the power to erase entire planets, entire civilizations. They couldn't let it fall into their hands, but something about it felt wrong. As a soldier, Jack had always followed orders. But this time, the decision was his. It wasn't just about fighting the enemy. It was about deciding whether to destroy something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Could they really risk it? Jack, we don't have time, Alira said, her voice urgent. They're coming. We need to destroy it now. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He looked at the weapon again, at the energy flowing through it. In that moment, he knew this was their only chance. If they didn't destroy it, they might not get another shot. He turned to Alira, his face set with determination. Let's do it. Alira nodded, her expression softening for the briefest of moments. She stepped toward the weapon's core, pulling a device from her belt. It was a small, sleek object, designed to trigger the self-destruct sequence for Dravith technology. With steady hands, she connected the device to the core, and the screen on the device blinked to life. The countdown has started, Alira said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. We have 10 minutes. Jack stepped back, watching the glowing core of the weapon as it began to hum louder, its energy growing stronger. The room seemed to pulse with the power of it. This was it. This was the moment that could either save or doom the galaxy. But as the countdown ticked down, something unexpected happened. The doors to the chamber slammed shut with a loud crash. Jack spun around, his hand reaching for his blaster, but it was too late. Dravith soldiers poured into the room, their eyes glowing with a cold, unnatural light. They were too many to fight. No, Alira shouted, her voice filled with panic. We can't let them stop us. But the soldiers were closing in fast. Jack's mind raced. There had to be a way out. They couldn't let the Dravith take control of the weapon again. If they did, the galaxy would fall, suddenly. A voice echoed in the room, a voice Jack didn't expect to hear. Enough. Alira froze. Jack looked up, his eyes narrowing. Standing at the entrance to the chamber was a figure in dark armor, their face hidden by a helmet. The figure raised one hand, and the Dravith soldiers immediately stopped, their weapons lowering. The air was thick with tension as the figure stepped forward. Who are you? Jack demanded, his hand still gripping his blaster. The figure didn't answer at first. Instead, they reached up and removed their helmet, revealing a face Jack recognized immediately. It was Ascuria, a member of Alira's royal family, Princess Alira. The figure said, their voice calm but filled with authority. I see you finally made it here. Alira's eyes widened in shock. Father, is it really you? The figure nodded. Yes, daughter. It's me. Jack's mind raced. This was impossible. The scurry Emperor Alira's father had been thought dead for years. No one had known what had happened to him. And yet, here he was, standing before them, alive and in control of the Dravith forces. "What is going on?" Jack demanded, stepping forward. "Why are you with the Dravith?" The Emperor's gaze shifted to him, his eyes cold and calculating. "I did what was necessary to secure the future of the Scurry Empire. I forged an alliance with the Dravith, knowing that only by doing so could we ensure our survival." Alira's voice shook. "You betrayed us. You betrayed everything we stand for." "I did what was needed," the Emperor replied, his voice heavy with the weight of his decisions. "The Dravith are powerful. Together, we could control the galaxy. Your mission to destroy this weapon was never meant to succeed." "It was a test, a test?" Jack echoed, disbelief in his voice. "You let us come here to die?" The Emperor's gaze softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. "I never wanted you to die, daughter. But the galaxy is changing. The Dravith will be unstoppable without the right leadership. I am that leader. And you, Alira, must accept that." Jack's mind was spinning. Everything he had believed about this mission was suddenly turned upside down. Alira's father, the very person they had been trying to protect the galaxy from, was here, working with the enemy. He had manipulated them all along. Alira stepped forward, her face set in defiance. "No, Father, I won't let you destroy everything we've worked for. You've betrayed everything the Scree stand for. You've betrayed me." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You are weak, Alira. You've always been weak." The room fell silent as the countdown reached its final moments. Jack looked at Alira, then back at the Emperor. The weight of the choice fell heavily on him. He could no longer stand by and let the Dravith take control. He knew what he had to do. "Alira, now!" Jack shouted out without thinking. He lunged toward the device that was still connected to the weapon's core. The moment he hit the button, the weapon erupted in a blinding flash of light. The energy from the weapon surged around the room, shaking the entire facility. The Dravith soldiers screamed as the facility began to collapse around them. "Run!" Jack yelled. He grabbed Alira's arm, pulling her toward the exit. The Emperor's figure faded into the chaos, but they didn't have time to think about him now. They had to survive. The countdown had reached 0, and the weapon had been destroyed. The Dravith's plans were in ruins. Together, they ran through the collapsing facility, escaping into the chaos of the planet's surface as the explosion shook the ground beneath them.